When Bryan Torres looked Susan Mitchell in the eye and declared, "Cooking is a man's world, sweetheart. Women just don't have what it takes to be real chefs," the entire MasterChef kitchen fell into stunned silence. But what happened 90 minutes later, when Gordon Ramsay tasted Susan's flawless French technique and declared it the most precise classical cooking I've seen in 30 years, while Bryan's dish sat rejected and criticized, would become the most satisfying moment of justice in competition history. This wasn't just about cooking anymore. This was about a woman proving that skill, dedication, and expertise have nothing to do with gender and everything to do with talent that can't be ignored or dismissed. The cameras kept rolling. But this was no longer about winning a competition. This was about the moment when outdated prejudice met undeniable excellence, and about a professional chef who would let her work speak louder than any ignorant comment ever could. It started as the most technically demanding elimination challenge of the season. 6 contestants remained, each fighting desperately for their place in the semifinals. The MasterChef kitchen buzzed with intense energy as Gordon Ramsay prepared to announce the challenge that would separate the truly skilled from those who had been lucky enough to make it this far. Today's elimination challenge is all about classical French technique, Gordon declared, his voice carrying the weight of culinary tradition. You have 90 minutes to create a dish that showcases your knife skills, your understanding of mother sauces, and your ability to execute classical French cooking at the highest level. This is where technique matters more than creativity. French technique, the foundation of professional cooking, the standard by which all serious chefs are measured, perfect knife work, precise sauce making, and an understanding of flavors that had been refined over centuries of culinary evolution. Susan Mitchell stood at her station with quiet confidence, her 15 years of professional experience evident in her posture and preparation. At 34, she was a classically trained chef who had worked in some of the best restaurants in New York and Paris. She had studied under French masters, had earned her stripes in demanding professional kitchens, and had spent years perfecting the techniques that would be tested today. But since arriving at MasterChef, Susan had faced constant undermining from Bryan Torres, a 29-year-old line cook who had appointed himself the authority on real cooking. Despite having less training and experience than Susan, Bryan had repeatedly made comments about women's capabilities in professional kitchens, suggesting that successful female chefs were either sleeping their way to the top or benefiting from diversity hiring. "I don't know why they keep putting women in these competitions," Bryan had said loudly during prep time, making sure Susan and the cameras could hear him. Cooking at this level is about strength, endurance, and natural instinct. Women just don't have the physical capability or the mental toughness for real professional cooking. Susan had learned long ago that responding to such comments only encouraged more of them. She had spent her career letting her skills speak for themselves, proving her worth through consistency, technical excellence, and professional results, rather than engaging in arguments with insecure colleagues. Especially French cooking, Bryan continued, warming to his favorite topic. That's pure technique, pure tradition. It requires the kind of precision and strength that men are naturally better at. No offense, Susan, but you're going to struggle today. Susan didn't respond, but several other contestants were visibly uncomfortable with Bryan's commentary. They had watched Susan cook for weeks and knew that her technical skills were extraordinary, far exceeding Bryan's actual capabilities despite his loud confidence. "Your time starts now." The challenge began with contestants rushing to plan their dishes and organize their ingredients. Susan moved with calm efficiency, her mind immediately focused on a classic coq au vin with perfectly brunoise vegetables and a mother sauce that would showcase her understanding of French fundamentals. Her knife work was immediately mesmerizing to watch. Susan's cuts were geometrically perfect. Her brunoise was exactly uniform. Her julienne vegetables were precisely the same size, and her movements were so fluid and controlled that it looked effortless. This was the result of thousands of hours of practice, of working in kitchens where imperfect knife work meant starting over, of training that had turned classical technique into muscle memory. Meanwhile, Bryan was executing a simpler approach, a basic pan-seared chicken with what he called rustic vegetables. His knife work was adequate, but noticeably less precise than Susan's, his technique more forced and less refined. "Look at her showing off with all that fancy knife work," Bryan commented loudly to another contestant. "In a real kitchen, you don't have time for that Instagram pretty stuff. You need to be fast and practical, not worried about making everything look perfect." But Gordon Ramsay, observing from across the kitchen, was watching Susan's preparation with obvious professional appreciation. Her brunoise was restaurant quality, her mise en place was perfectly organized, and her understanding of classical French method was evident in every movement. 45 minutes into the challenge, Susan was building her coq au vin with methodical precision. Her sauce work was extraordinary. She was creating a classic French reduction that required constant attention, perfect temperature control, and an understanding of how flavors develop over time. The aroma from her station was rich and complex, filling that section of the kitchen with the kind of smell that comes only from properly executed classical technique. Bryan, meanwhile, was struggling with his supposedly practical approach. His chicken was cooking unevenly, his vegetables were roughly cut and inconsistently sized, and his sauce lacked the depth that comes from understanding classical French methods. "I still say this is all for show," Bryan muttered, glancing over at Susan's station where her dish was developing beautifully. "Real cooking is about getting food out fast and hot, not about making everything look like art school." Susan continued working with focused intensity, her years of professional training evident in every technique she employed. She was deglazing her pan with wine at exactly the right moment, incorporating cold butter into her sauce with the precision that created perfect emulsification, and monitoring multiple elements simultaneously with the kind of multitasking that separated professional cooks from home cooks. 30 minutes remaining," Gordon announced. Susan's dish was coming together beautifully. Her coq au vin showed deep, complex flavors that could only be achieved through proper technique and timing. Her garnish work was precise and elegant, and her plating preparation showed the kind of attention to detail that comes from working in high-end restaurants where every plate had to be perfect. Bryan was falling behind. His simpler approach wasn't saving him time because he lacked the technical foundation to execute efficiently. His chicken was overcooked on one side and undercooked on the other. His vegetables looked amateurish, and his sauce was thin and flavorless. 15 minutes, time for final plating. Susan began assembling her dish with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Her plating was elegant and precise, each component positioned with purpose and artistry that elevated the classical dish into something that looked like fine dining. Bryan was panicking now, trying to salvage a dish that had been poorly executed from the start. His plating was sloppy and rushed, his components poorly coordinated, and his final presentation looked exactly like what it was: amateur work trying to pass for professional cooking. "Time! Hands up! Step back!" The judging began with Gordon approaching each station to evaluate the dishes. The contrast between the two stations was immediately apparent. Susan's dish looked like it belonged in a Michelin-starred restaurant, while Bryan's looked like cafeteria food. Gordon started with Bryan's station, and his expression showed immediate disappointment. He cut into the chicken, revealing uneven cooking and poor technique throughout. "Bryan," Gordon said after tasting, "this chicken is overcooked and dry, the vegetables are roughly cut and underseasoned, and this sauce has no depth or complexity. This doesn't demonstrate the classical French technique that was required for this challenge." Bryan's confident facade cracked immediately. "But chef, I was focusing on practical cooking, the kind that works in real kitchens." "This isn't practical," Gordon interrupted firmly. "This is just poorly executed." Then Gordon approached Susan's station, and his entire demeanor changed. The dish looked stunning, perfect classic French presentation with modern refinement. He cut into the chicken, revealing meat that was cooked to perfection, and tasted each component thoughtfully. Gordon's expression showed genuine admiration and professional respect. Susan, Gordon said, his voice filled with unmistakable appreciation, this is extraordinary. This coq au vin shows classical French technique at the highest level. The sauce is perfectly balanced, the knife work is precise, and the overall execution is flawless. The kitchen fell silent as Gordon continued his evaluation. In 30 years of cooking and judging, I can count on one hand the number of times I've seen classical French technique executed with this level of precision, Gordon continued. This is restaurant-quality cooking that would be impressive in any professional kitchen in France. Gordon turned to address the entire kitchen, using Susan's achievement as a teaching moment. Let me be absolutely clear about something, Gordon announced, his voice carrying authority that commanded attention. Cooking excellence has nothing to do with gender. It has everything to do with skill, training, dedication, and respect for technique. Gordon looked directly at Bryan. I heard some comments earlier about women's capabilities in professional kitchens. Let me tell you something, the dish I just tasted represents cooking at a level that most chefs, regardless of gender, never achieve. Bryan stood speechless, his earlier confidence completely shattered by the objective evidence of Susan's superior skills. Susan has just demonstrated everything we look for in classical French cooking, Gordon continued. Her knife work is precise. Her sauce technique is masterful, and her understanding of flavor development is exceptional. This is what professional cooking looks like. What happened next was unprecedented in MasterChef history. Gordon turned back to Bryan with an expression that showed barely controlled anger. Bryan, your comments about women in cooking are not only wrong, they're insulting to every talented female chef who has ever worked in this industry, Gordon said firmly. Susan has just proven that skill and technique are what matter in this kitchen, not outdated prejudices. Gordon made the elimination announcement. Bryan, your time in the MasterChef kitchen is over. Please turn in your apron. As Bryan walked out, several contestants couldn't hide their satisfaction. Justice had been served. The contestant who had been disrespectful and dismissive had been eliminated, while the chef he had tried to diminish had delivered the best dish of the day. Susan, Gordon said, turning back to the woman who had just delivered a master class in classical cooking. You're not only safe from elimination, you've just shown everyone what real cooking excellence looks like. This dish would be impressive in any restaurant in the world. The episode became legendary because it represented something viewers deeply valued, seeing talent triumph over ignorance and watching skill be recognized regardless of who possessed it. Susan's victory wasn't handed to her. She earned it through superior technique, deeper understanding, and years of dedicated professional training. Susan went on to win the entire MasterChef competition, and her victory speech focused not on proving anyone wrong, but on encouraging other women to pursue their culinary dreams with confidence and dedication. Today, Susan runs an acclaimed restaurant that focuses on classical French technique with modern innovation. Her success stands as proof that excellence knows no gender boundaries and that the best response to prejudice is always undeniable skill. Bryan, humbled by his experience, eventually apologized publicly and acknowledged that his comments were wrong. He returned to cooking school to actually learn the techniques he had dismissed, and later credited his MasterChef experience with teaching him that respect must be earned through ability, not assumed through arrogance. Because that's what this moment taught everyone watching, that true professional excellence transcends gender, background, or any other arbitrary category, and that the most satisfying victories come from letting your work speak louder than anyone's prejudices ever could. If you enjoyed this story about skill triumphing over prejudice, you can watch more videos that showcase real talent and professional excellence on our channel. Subscribe to stay updated with stories that remind us that ability should always be judged by results, not assumptions based on outdated stereotypes.